I'm Tori, and today I'm going to be discussing Blue Lily Lily Blue and The Raven King. These are the last two books in the Raven cycle by Maggie Stiefvater, and I listened to the audiobooks narrated by Will Patton. I really enjoyed these books. They tell a great modern fantasy story that also feels ancient, and I would highly recommend them. I've also done a video on the first two books in the series, The Raven Boys and The Dream Thieves, and I will link that in the video description. So if you want to read this series, I recommend that you go do that, then come back to hear my opinions. So I really enjoyed these last two books in the series. I felt like they did a great job of continuing to let us get to know the characters and continuing the story, and I still love the tone so much. Henrietta is such a magical place, and I love all the ancient history tied in, and I love how deeply important everything feels, and just the overall tone and setting are just so wonderful. I really liked it that we kept adding new characters. I thought Piper and Greenmantle were hilarious, and they were probably one of my favorite parts of the third book. I love just kind of the ditzy, money-grabbing people coming into town into the middle of this big epic stuff and kind of wading in and messing it all up, and it was just so much fun to watch them, especially Piper. Piper was hilarious, and she is one of my favorite characters. I liked meeting Gwenthian at the end of the third book. She was a great addition. I loved how crazy and off the wall she was, and she fit in perfectly with the house full of psychics. Artemis was also interesting, but he didn't really add much character-wise to the story. Mostly he's just there and he hardly ever comes out, and his biggest contribution is letting Blue know that she is really half tree. And then I also really liked the orphan girl. I loved that she was such a beautiful, delicate, unbelievable creature that Ronan just managed to dream up, and I love how beautiful Ronan's dreams are, even though he has such a gruff, harsh exterior. And I loved basically all of the parts in these books that related to Ronan. I loved watching his relationship with Adam develop. It was great watching them fall in love in kind of a realistic way, you know. It wasn't the cinematic, oh yes, we shall be together forever, and rush into each other's arms. It was a very slow kind of build, with both people being kind of cautious, and with Ronan realizing he needed to not push Adam, and with Adam realizing that this relationship would mean a lot to Ronan, and he shouldn't get into it unless he was very serious about it. And then they were both aware that Ronan wants to live on his family's farm forever, and Adam wants to go away to college, and they managed to think about that before they started their relationship, and to compromise and make it work and say it's okay if Adam goes away to college. He'll come back to the farm afterward, and that they can still see each other. And it was a really kind of realistic relationship, I thought. It wasn't overly glamorized. It seemed like something that could actually happen in the real world. And they definitely did figure everything out by the end of the book, and they had a good plan for what their lives together were going to be like. Though I did wish we could have seen a little bit more of that conversation happen on the page. We saw a lot of both of them thinking about it when we were inside each character's head. You know, we'd see them thinking about what had to happen, and then at the end you kind of see what solution they've come to. But we don't really see a lot from them after they finally kiss and finally get together. Then we don't see anything explicit about their relationship after that. Then the whole plot of the book takes over, and we don't really get to know too much about their personal lives after that, apart from just the major decisions they've come to about how they're going to live their lives, and that Adam is going to go to college and Ronan is going to go live straight on the farm right away. I was much less pleased with Blue and Gansey's relationship. It is more of the focus of the book. Ronan and Adam are more of a side plot. Blue and Gansey are the central focus of the book. Blue has had this prophecy that if she kisses her true love, he will die, and it's a very big centerpiece of the book. And I actually liked Blue and Gansey together some of the time, especially earlier on when they weren't actually dating and they were just doing things together and going on adventures together and not trying to be a couple, and they were just interacting together. I liked them a lot. But it feels like every time they do try to be a couple, they spend the whole time just bickering and discussing what it means to be together and how forbidden it is and how they want to be together, but they can't. And it all felt very melodramatic, and I just stopped rooting for them after a while. they had this whole thing where they couldn't be together because it would hurt Adam, but they didn't actually decide not to be together. They just decided to hide that they were together, and they still hurt Adam, and they just handled everything very clumsily and spent a whole lot of time having relationship drama that I didn't care about at all. And then at the end, we have this prophecy that if Blue kisses her true love, he will die. And we've always been pretty sure it was going to be Gansey because she saw his spirit and she knew he was going to die this year and she would either be his true love or kill him. And, both probably. And then we get to this dramatic moment, and we'd had this vision in the tree that it turns out wasn't a real vision of what that kiss would look like. And in reality, it wasn't some big emotional thing that happened. It was that, physically kissing her killed him, and it didn't really have anything to do with her being his true love. It was because she was a mirror, and Gansey had whatever special powers he had, and just that was a bad combination, and that killed him immediately. And it seemed like the whole thing was a little hyped up, because it wouldn't have mattered if he was her true love or not. It was just, Blue shouldn't kiss Gansey, because Blue will kill him. And it wasn't as satisfying as I wanted it to be. A lot of things about the conclusion weren't satisfying for me. I really enjoyed most of the third book, and then, at the end of it, they wake the demon, and it's this giant hornet thing that is really super terrifying. And then the fourth book opens, and it's almost like a horror novel now, because there's all this weird stuff that's happening, and the demon is just getting more and more powerful, and people keep going on these side quests, and they don't know what to believe and what not to believe, and there's shadows following them around, and there's all this dramatic tension, and then it just kind of goes away after about the first third of the book, and the book just sort of continues on, and Piper has her auction to sell the demon, and it's not really that big of a deal. There was this foreshadowing thing where there was a way to kill the demon. I just hadn't thought of it. And because they talked about the demon being born of destruction, not creation, I kept thinking that they would find a way to avoid killing someone and making a sacrifice, and that really they had to create something and help life flourish and make a positive change in the world, and that would transform the demon into something happy, and that instead of trying to kill the demon and unmake the demon, that's what the demon was all about, and they had to positively create something, and that would change the demon and make life better. But it wasn't anything like that at all. Their whole thing did end up being, I want to kill the demon, make it so. And Gansey did end up dying, and it just felt really anticlimactic. Also, because Glendower had never been asleep. It was just his body that was here the whole time, so they'd been hoping to find Glendower, and Glendower had been the one to resurrect Gansey. But it wasn't really Glendower, it was the ley line. It was because Noah had died on the ley line that Gansey was able to live, and then Noah came back to Gansey and was the one who said, you will live because of Glendower. And it wasn't really because of Glendower, it was because of the myth of Glendower that Gansey managed to build up around all his friends, including Noah. And that's kind of sweet, that Glendower existed in all of their minds, and so he mattered a lot to all of them. But at the same time, it leaves a lot of questions. Like, why did we spend this whole book looking for Glendower when it was never real? He was never really asleep. And we know people can be asleep, because Gwyntheon was asleep, and the giant evil hornet thing was asleep. So why wasn't Glendower? Oh, and also we had the whole thing of the three sleepers, the one to wake, the one to not wake, and the one that's unclear. And we were pretty certain that it was, you should wake Glendower, don't wake the demon, and maybe wake up Gwyntheon. But Glendower wasn't actually a sleeper, so there was the whole thing where Adam thought he might have been a sleeper. It was weird. I would have just liked a scene where all of the characters got together and talked about, okay, Glendower wasn't real, but aren't we glad we went on this adventure? And who do you think the three sleepers really were? And just kind of put the plot in order. It felt like everything just kind of ended with a lot of questions. And I also didn't like the way that Gansey came back to life, because you knew that Gansey was not going to be dead at the end of the novel, even though all four of these books have been foreshadowing Gansey is going to die. You never really expected him to wind up dead. You knew he was probably going to die, but, it wouldn't stick. And it was interesting. Like, I kind of liked the idea of Cave's water sacrificing itself for Gansey, though I also wanted to know what made Gansey so special that Cave's water would sacrifice itself for him. I guess just because he was special to Ronan and Cave's water loved Ronan. I don't really know. But then it didn't talk about Gansey changing at all. When they were planning this, it sounded like Gansey would be changed. You'd think dying would change a person, and that Cave's water being part of him would change him and change fundamental things about him. But we didn't get to see enough about him after he was resurrected to really see what had happened and see how Cave's water and this whole experience had changed him. And that was really unsatisfying too. So I still loved this whole world. I loved the house full of psychics. Reading about them made me want to get out my tarot cards and learn the ways of the tarot, or at least use them for decorations because they're really pretty. And I loved watching Mr. Gray run around, and there's this whole black market of things that Ronan and his dad have made, basically, that people are convinced come from around the world, but it's really just stuff that Ronan and his dad made. And I loved watching the Gray Man confront all these criminals and decide to take down this whole network and make life safer for everyone. I loved all of those elements. I loved the house full of psychics, and that Persephone was still kind of communicating with people even after she died. I still love all the history and stuff about the great Welsh kings, and that Gwenllian was related to Glendower. It was all amazing. So I did enjoy a lot of things about these books. I loved the tone, I loved the setting, I loved watching all the characters interact. I love this whole world and this whole universe and all the magic that exists in it. And it was fun to just go to Henrietta and exist there with all of these amazing characters. But I was also pretty disappointed with the conclusion of the books. I felt like we didn't get a lot of information about important plot details, and I wasn't super satisfied with getting to see where the romantic relationships would go after this book. And I wish that I could see just a little bit more of this world and have a few more questions answered, and that maybe just the ending hadn't been quite so rushed.